Namaskar, good afternoon to one and all. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you so much. A warm welcome from Biotechnology Research and Innovation Council, which is BRIC, which is a DBT organization, Department of Biotechnology organization. From Translation Health Science and Technology Institute. We welcome all of you for this today's webinar on 23rd July. And I'd like to invite Dr. Dinda to say a few words as a welcome address and opening remarks. He's the Director, Research and Consultant at Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. Any scheme which is which is focused on enhancing the quality can never be completed without having experts and user. Dr. Dinda forms a part of both expert and user. So I think he is the right person to say a few words and then welcome. Over to you, Dr. Dinda.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sucheta. So I welcome all of you on behalf of THSTI and BRIC for this important awareness program webinar. Now, this program, I think the first webinar, in fact, had the 500 registration and over 395 people attended that. And the second such webinar was on the 1st December 2023. It had more than 100 the participants and registered. Now this is the 8th webinar on this series, and so this is basically an important awareness program for the clinicians and other experts associated with the clinical trial and as well as different kind of clinical research in diverse medical specialty. And this good clinical practice professional certification scheme obviously will be very important for all of us to understand the different kind of logistics involved in clinical research where subjects are human beings, our patients, and also sometimes the volunteers and other clinical cohort. I believe that the encouraging response from the clinician and other expert really indicates that you people are interested and in enhancing the quality of the clinical research, and obviously this will improve the quality of the clinical trial. Now, the people at the groups in the Transitional Health Science and Technology Institute, that is THSTI, which is under DBT, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, they are always very keen to ensure that people engaged in clinical research and clinical trial are trained in the best of the global practices. Because you have to realize that there are changing scenario in the regulatory and ethical requirement across the different country as well as in India, because we are exposed to very, very state-of-the-art health intervention technology, where when we were students, we didn't know about those technologies. Now, I think it's very important for us to adapt these kind of technology, particularly when it conforms to the clinical trial. Now, this GCPPCS is a basically new initiative. This is first in the global based on the International Personal Certification Standard, that is ISO 17024 2012. And it was launched by THSTI and dedicated to the nation on the 70th Independence Day by Dr. Renish Swarup. And he was that time the Secretary of Department of Biotechnology. And obviously it was also that time jointly offered to the nation by Dr. Pramod Gaur, who was Executive Director of THSTI DBT that time. I mean, this series of awareness webinar has been scheduled to prospective clinical research professionals who are required to have knowledge about good clinical practices for certification to make them aware of these the GCPPCS program. Now, I would like to mention that for any kind of the healthcare intervention or any the reproducible data generation in the clinical research, the good clinical practice, the ideas are extremely important. If you look into the total scenario, we have got the laboratory accreditation where the NABL is leading that, and we have got GLP, that is good clinical, good laboratory practice enabled animal facilities and preclinical testing facility. We have got GMP, that is good manufacturing practices, which is extremely essential for any biological, pharmaceutical, whatever you want to do in apply to the patients or human being. So similarly, when we are doing clinical research, this good clinical practice is extremely important. Because the GCP that way has become a lot of the internet or web-based, the training resources are available. But all the more, I think when we go for this, the professional certification scheme, that helps us for the benchmarking, where it will be obviously recognized across the other countries and global scenario. And it will help us to connect with the international developer and multinational clinical trial, where standard of clinical research and trial in India will be recognized by other countries. And that is extremely important, particularly for encouraging the newer innovations which we are implementing in healthcare intervention, as well as our startup ecosystem, where the DBT, DHSTI, BIDAC, they are playing a very, very the big role in making self-sufficient India. So I feel this webinar will be very informative to all of us. And particularly, we try to understand what is the requirement of this professional certification scheme. So thank you. Over to Dr. Suchita.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dindaji. You have been very kind enough to tell this, and being one of the users of this certification scheme, I think your presence here today makes a huge difference. Being one of the biggest, I think, medical hospital and largest number of bedded facility, I think it brings a lot of satisfaction that such organizations are not in volume wise, quantity wise the largest, but also quality wise they are the first one, for foremost to come. So that's a huge satisfaction to any Indian like me. Thank you so much once again. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take you towards the session, which is on the overview about this. So let me start sharing my screen. And if you have any questions at the end of the session or at the end of the day today, we would take up all the questions. So I think I have uploaded the wrong one. Let me stop it. Just okay, it takes only one. Just kindly bear with me. Actually, I had thought that I have the right slide, but I think it was the background slide which I was sharing. Yeah, this is the right. Thank you so much for your patience in waiting. Yeah, I'll take you through a very short, succinct presentation of what is GCPPCS and why we are here. That will help us to understand something, create a base of which, after which my colleague, Dr. Sanish, will speak about MSc, and that will make sense more. We are all aware that working with patients, I call them participants, is a very, very important factor. And when we work with them, we must know what we should do, whether it is a research or whether it is a trial. When I do assessment as an NABH assessor, as well as WHO SITCA for CAP surveyor, many times I see documents which are training certificate, and they are taken up from different sites. I would not like to name them, but there are all international sites, and they definitely speak about ICH GCP, but they do not speak about the CDAC or GCP. They do speak about different ethical guidelines, but they never speak about the national ethical guidelines of ICMR. So when we are driving in India, we have to know that it is not same as driving in Middle East or any other country where there's a difference in left hand and right hand drive. It's extremely important that whatever is easily available doesn't mean that it is the right way. For that, we have been tackling in various ways. We are coming up with an online course called Protect, which will take care of the ethical areas, and online course. We are also coming up with this GCPPCS, which will help us to understand whether people are really trained in GCP or it's just an online certification that they have taken by only doing 15 minutes of GCP interaction. So this is GCPPCS is based on a solid technical ground. If you see the 19th March 2019, the release of the new drugs and clinical trial rules, which we call it as NDCT, and they mentioned in that the GCP that we always mention is not the ICH GCP 6R2 or the upcoming R3, but it is the GCP which is released by the government of India by CDSCO, which is 2001. Now, what is GCP? For the people who are first timers in the area of clinical research or clinical trials, it is one of the best practices globally, internationally standardized, which is an international ethical, scientific, and quality standard of how you want to do a clinical research or clinical trial. It can be how will you design a trial? What is the sample size you will think of? What kind of study design you will select? How will you conduct it? Will you conduct as per the design? When you conduct the study, are you recording it? If you're recording it, is anybody monitoring it, auditing it? Are there any inspections? Are you reporting as per the international trial reporting norms or as per the regulatory submissions? This entire procedure is a cycle which one has to follow and understand various stakeholders' role in that. For example, sponsor, monitor, investigator, institution. Now, there's a question, is GCP compliance necessary? If I visit the page 150 and 151 of the NDCT rules 2019, it clearly mentions that the ethics committee will be disqualified if they aren't trained with GCP. And when they say GCP, they actually mean the GCP by CDSU 2001. So it's very important for us to understand. For ethics committee, it is a mandatory. So is it only mandatory for ethics committee, not the investigator, not the sponsor, not the monitor, not the auditor? It is a totality of responsibility. When NABH started with accreditation, it started with ethics committee, thinking that ethics committee play a crucial role, and that's why it was made a mandatory. Similarly, when GCP compliance is made mandatory for ethics committee members, it is also indirectly mandated that all people who are involved in clinical trials in any capacity must be GCP trained. Why did we start with this? CDS at THSTI has been training for close to 12 years plus in the area of good clinical practice, current regulatory requirements for conducting clinical trials in India, current ethical requirements for conducting clinical trials in India. Over a period of time, we thought that training is a continual process, but there has not been any particular standardized system by which we can understand that the people are trained. There are systems whereby we can understand that an ethics committee is accredited or, through various accreditation system, but there's no personal certifications existed. That's when the role of Quality Council of India came and National Accreditation Board for Certification bodies came into picture. So we went there after our training advisory committee guided us and met Anil Johri ji, who was the CEO of NABCB that time, and that was the birth of thinking process of coming up with something which nothing existed, or we call it world's first such personal certification scheme made in India for the world. Very fortunately, due to many people's contribution, this was dedicated to the nation, as just rightly said by Dr. Dinda just now, and we have been very fortunate to have Dr. Renu Swarup ji, who was there for the launch, and then followed by our team, Dr. Garg and all our team members. You can see Professor Dibjani and our team members here also for this launch on the auspicious occasion of 15th August. So there was a question that why we would like to do that. Definitely we were not very much sure that whether we should be doing, and we thought that some other organization taking lead would be certainly better and we would support it. But there were no organizations in our our arena, or we knew it, who were interested. So we thought that we should climb up the ladder, assume a higher role as a scheme owner, and take this journey. Being a part of a government organization, I think people would have a little bit more trust and thought about, thinking of people who can where this such type of scheme can begin. Maybe government, it might be people's more trust, or maybe we can link with people more. In such scenarios, do they occur? Yes. If you see the global structure, there are two types of areas where it is regulated, like drugs, mainly drugs, and other areas where there is a lot of statutory requirements, and also there is some voluntary space. I always say quality is quite voluntary in nature. Like you want to go to school, that's mandatory, but getting that gold medal in the class is quite voluntary. Every parent cannot expect or pressurize this children or what to do get that. So but going to school, every children should, and every what must think about it. So in Indian scenario also, there exists a similar global structure of regulatory sector and voluntary. Since regulatory is more towards statutory requirements, just like I mentioned, drugs, like by the Indian Drug Regulatory Agencies, CDSU, Central Drugs Standard Control Organization, food, now that you can hear a lot of things about FSSI, and insurance and telecom services. But there are a lot of voluntary schemes that exist. For example, traditional healers, yoga certification board, forest certification scheme. These are all very schemes which has come out to enhance the quality of that area. So our GCPPCS is based on exactly similar concepts like yoga as well as traditional healer, where person are certified on the basis of an international standard. This was some of the SWOT analysis that we had done when we planned to do this. We claim to be one of the first of its kind because we do not have any data which claims that such personal certification exists. If it existed, I think we would not have reinvented the wheel. It is based on an international standard 17024, and we at CDSA THSTI, are now called BRIC, Biotechnology Research Innovation Council, is the scheme owner of this. My next slide will help you to understand this. This is how we made we had met our present Drugs Controller General of India to brief him about our activities. And I'm sure when we are able to gain more data and confidence, he's already aware about the steps being taken. And that's how the birth of CTRI happened, and GCPPCS might move into that area. So the GCPPCS is a personal certification scheme which is based on competence, which is knowledge and skill. If you have the knowledge of the GCP, and you possess the skill while working in this area, you should be able to achieve this GCPPCS. The present one which we are working on, or you will be applying to, our basic version. Once we are okay and standardize the basic version, we will move to the advanced version, but that's going to take some time till we start and have this with us. So this is a very important slide for all of us to understand. And this is how the entire GCP PCS scheme works. We as a scheme owner, you can see there, and we have two different bodies. Suppose you feel that you're confident in GCP, you have worked in this area for several years, and you are able to take the assessment or examination system, then you should rightly think of personal certification bodies. So there are personal certification bodies where you can go. You will have details in our website. NICU is one of them, Northeastern Christian University, and all details are provided in our slide deck as well as in the website. You can directly approach them and you can take the examination whenever it is scheduled. These examinations are now all online. Of course, they are proctored and they have high security measures to ensure the integrity of the candidate. And these personal certifications are tagged with an ABCD because NICU is also 17024 accredited. As a result, they are having a traceability towards NABCD, which is National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies of Quality Council of India. And I will speak about their international equivalence in the next slide. Suppose you are not trained, or you are trained but you're not very confident, then it is good idea to take some training in the area of good clinical practice. There are many training providers available, and we are seriously thinking of discussing with many public as well as private bodies who are providing already GCP training or would like to provide GCP training for participants to clear GCPPCS. It's just like somebody wants to give a NEET exam or a JEE exam. So there are centers who already teach students for JEE and NEET. So the training institutes will be more focused on how to ensure that participants do understand GCP and especially the minimum standard of competence. We have different bodies, which is very important to have a strong governance. We have a multi-disciplinary and a multi-ministerial committee called Steering Committee, which is headed by the chairperson is Shri Anil Johri, as he has been the backbone of how we have started with this GCPPCS scheme. We have a technical committee, and my colleague Dr. Sanish Davis is a member of the technical committee, and we have an assessment committee. Professor Devjani Roy is a part of that assessment committee. We also have a review and decision panel for taking decisions, and we also have an appellate authority. So it's a very the structure and the governance is quite as per the international requirements. My next slide tells you about the international equivalence. There is one more slide for international equivalence. Now, NABCB, that is National Accreditation Board for Certification Bodies, is a signatory for the International Accreditation Forum. They have signed a multilateral recognition arrangement and happens to be only one who has this in India. As a result, if NABCB has taken this into considerations and NACO is ISO 17024, then your certification here for GCPPCS becomes internationally equivalent. This is very, very important for us to understand that if you are equivalent, then you're internationally equivalent. So this is an international traceability like we have for different standards. For medical labs, we have ISO 15189. For testing and calibration labs, we have ISO 17025. So these are international traceability. Now, this is the slide which I was mentioning earlier, is about how the international traceability work. So as a result, you will see that the minimum standard of competence also considers the international standard like ICH GCP E6R2 present, and whichever is the present or will be updated for the standards. So it considers the international as well as the national, all the requirements for meeting this competency assessment. This is the strong governance structure which I was mentioning earlier. And our website, if you go to Google and put a link of GCPPCS, it straight brings you to our website. The website has all the data, all the forms. We also have FAQ and all the guidance for how to apply. Apart from there, we also have the email address, and my colleague, Dr. Sonia Moore, who is the program officer of GCPPCS, is very prompt and she expedites each and every query whenever we receive. We also connect to the experts or to PRCBs in case you have some requirements. We also have a lot of hand holding if you are interested to become a training institutions or you want to become a PRCBs, personal certification bodies, because it's a new scheme and very proudly belongs to India. I personally feel that there's a long way to go. And if you have any contributions, please feel free to give us the feedback. It will constantly help us to get better. These are different forms which are available. I was mentioning about this website and the email address. This all will help you get better. This is the photograph of how the website looks. And this is our PRCB, Northeast Christian University. And they are also ISO 17024 certified since long. So proudly organization which has been able to demonstrate. We have been working with many government and private institutions. For example, National Institute of Health and Family Welfare, where we shared an MOU with them. We also are working with other personal certification bodies in days to come, which we will advertise once the MOU is signed. This is a series of the webinars which are for outreach and sensitization. Today, we are on the verge of this one, 9th of July, which is July 23rd. And we have many more to go till December. And I'm sure that the response that we are getting is quite exciting to us, and we look forward to a really strong, high quality research in the area of clinical research and clinical trials to come in India. Thank you so much for your patient listening. Namaskar and Jai Hind. I will stop sharing and I will just request if my colleague, yes, let me have a pleasure to introduce Dr. Sanish Davis. He wears many hats. You don't see him wearing any now, but he has 3 hats. He is a member of technical committee at GCPPCS, which is at our BRIC and THSTI Department of Biotechnology. He is also the president of Indian Society for Clinical Research, a very, very important responsibility. And he is also the R&D director of Johnson & Johnson's Innovative Medicine. Over to you, Dr. Sanish Davis, for sharing the minimum standard of competence. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jita, and always it's a pleasure to actually have participation in another session of GCPPCS. So, good afternoon, everyone. You would have heard about the importance of GCP, and for anyone who is in medical research or in medical practice, research does play an important part of the whole armamentarium of offering patients another option, right? I mean, what we say as the care option that is always available, especially in diseases like oncology or even immunology and others. So what then does this mean? So from the perspective of, you could say, GCP, as well as you could say what it means to actually be a GCP professional, we all probably might be aware that the DTAB, which is actually the body within CDSU, which actually looks at streamlining clinical studies as well as clinical research, they have adopted GCP guidelines, which was released in 2001 and which is now currently undergoing revision for all the studies that are ongoing in India. And GCP is also adopted by ISO, and that means that it is becoming, or rather it has already become a standard. But when you have a standard, you also need something which actually assesses whether somebody who is in research can actually perform or do what is required as per the standard. But unfortunately, we do not have any such assessment mechanism which can actually say that the standard and what that standard means is actually being translated into the field of research. So that's where I think the origin of GCPPCS actually comes, especially in a country like India, which is very vast in its territory, in its geography. There is a huge requirement for a qualified clinical research workforce. Now, this could be both people who are newly coming into the field or who are starting to work in research, but also people who already have some form of exposure to research. But we do not know whether the competence and skills are actually appropriate for the current workforce to actually continue to be in doing research or assisting research, etc. So the 3 competence that are going to be assessed in any clinical research discipline is the skills, knowledge, and the application of those skills and knowledge. And we understand and believe that since these competencies are observable, they can also be measured, and you can also find out whether they can be imbibed by a new person who's, you could say, coming into clinical research. So currently, there are no agreed upon set of these core capabilities, or what we call as competencies, on which you can actually say whether a person who's trained in clinical research actually can perform as per the standard or not. It also behoves that because we don't have an agreed set of competencies, we also do not know what kind of additional training or other professional development is needed for somebody who's already working in the field of clinical research. So the scheme is designed to evaluate and certify in a self-directed practice-based learning manner rather than in a supervised training approach. What does this mean? It means that anybody who's working in clinical research, whether you are a very senior researcher, whether you are a mid-level researcher or a junior researcher, you can actually take the exam, or you can actually self-certify, or rather you could say certify yourself through this you could say certification. It is also envisaged to promote, maintain, and develop the competency. So somebody who's been working in research for several years may be working in a small domain or a small part of the whole clinical research. Now, that does not make that person to be a clinical research professional. So we want to see whether a person who's already in the field can develop further competencies through the mechanism of professionalism, knowledge, skills, as well as application of the same to the discipline of clinical research. The competence standards also ensures that the applicants can actually plan, record, and reflect on their own development pathway and the requirements that are needed to actually get to a set of, you could say, competency. And that's how THSTI DBT has developed the minimum standard of competence for a GCP professional. And at the end of the same, what a person will actually be able to, you could say, certify is that this is a person who has can be certified at a basic level. Now, the core competency for clinical research is divided into these 6 domains. So, protocol, investigational product development and regulations, ethical consideration for patient safety and well-being, clinical study operations, study and site management, and data management and informatics. So, like I stated earlier, somebody might be involved just in writing protocols, or might be just be involved in data management or biostatistics or other parts of, you could say, evaluating data. But if you have to actually state that you are a clinical research professional, you need to have exposure and understanding and knowledge of at least the basic parts of all these different domains that are there in clinical research. So let's dive deep into each of these competence domains. So the first one is on the protocol. Now, this domain looks at the knowledge of scientific concepts related to the design of the clinical research. So it could be what is the need, the rationale, the objectives of, you could say, the study. From the objectives flow the endpoints. So what is the primary endpoint, secondary, exploratory, etc., or composite, etc. And what is the outcome of the study? The most critical part of, you could say, writing the protocol is to identify the clinically important relevant question, which means that what is the reason why you're doing this research, right? And then, of course, the ability to, you could say, explain the key elements, whether it's statistical, epidemiological, operational, etc. And then, of course, a person should also have a basic knowledge of the pathophysiology, pharmacology, toxicology, and other parts related to the protocol. Now, it is obvious that many of these things might be not be relevant for an academic research work, because you would not need to know in detail about toxicology, etc. But somebody who's writing a protocol for a regulatory research or a research which might be with a new drug or with a new indication, etc., should have some understanding of these basic concepts of medicine. The second domain is on the investigational drug. Now, you can call this as investigational product or investigational drug, etc. So it kind of like starts all the way from discovery, development, manufacturing, as well as, you could say, all the different life cycles. So what do we mean by GMP or good manufacturing practice? What are the different regulatory requirements for usage of a drug in a particular geography, whether it is from the perspective of, you could say, the humidity, the temperature, all these different requirements that are there. The person should also be able to describe the specific processes and phase required for seeking marketing authorization after conduct of all the different trials, etc. And then, of course, when you're handling an investigational drug, you also need to have a good understanding of how to report safety related stuff. The third domain is the heart of GCP, what we call as the ethical consideration for patient safety and well-being. So this looks after what are some of the historical underpinning of ethical guidelines and regulatory process. What do we require from the perspective of participant protection in clinical research? Define the concepts of clinical equipoise and therapeutic misconception. And then, of course, all the other issues with regards to vulnerable population, what additional safeguard needs to be done. And especially in India, if you're doing a study or a clinical research on a new drug or in a vulnerable population, then you also need to understand a little bit about how to do an audio video recording of an informed consent. And then, of course, also medical treatment or medical reimbursement in case of safety issues, as well as compensation if it is applicable. So within the ethical part of, you could say, ensuring patient safety and well-being, there are different other elements that are to be covered. Part 4 is more about the clinical study operations, which is more from the perspective of the sponsor. So you could also have academic institutions which are sponsors for clinical trials, right, or clinical research. So this describes the roles and responsibilities of the investigational team, the design, the conduct and documentation, understanding about how safety reporting, etc., can be done. What controls need to be in place when dispensing investigational product? How do you actually have CRAs or others monitor the study? Then how do you audit the study that is done? And then, of course, the life cycle of the product, which also includes post-marketing activities. The fifth domain is on study and site management. So what happens exactly at the site? Which means that an institution, which could be either government, private, public, etc. So what are the human resource requirements, infrastructure requirements, finance requirements that are required for conducting a study at the site? How is the site selected? What is the investigator's oversight of the study? Financial management, timelines, and you could say, how do you actually ensure that the agreement or the budget are reviewed by a cross-disciplinary committee within the institution? And what are the procedures, documentation, and oversight management that are required by the different stakeholders? And the last domain is on data management and informatics. While it says data management, you would also have a little bit of biostatistics, you could say stats programming and others, which are part and parcel of any of the clinical trial. So understanding where does the biostatistician come in? How does the data flow through the clinical trial? How do you ensure that data edit checks are done in the sense that who ensures that the data is finally locked and it can now be analyzed, etc. How do you do blinding or unblinding of the data? And then other requirements for data correction queries and all the other data quality assurance, etc. Now, you could also define roles and competence of the GCP professional based on whether you require somebody to have basic knowledge or advanced level knowledge. Like Dr. Sujeta said, what we are trying to do is initially the basic level certification. And then, of course, things become, you could say, much more robust and there is good uptake. Then we would also develop something for the advanced level. So you can see that maybe an investigator needs great knowledge about the protocol, which is the competency 1, whereas the knowledge on data management may be, you could say, at a more basic level. Or if you take the example of a clinical data manager, the understanding of, say, protocol elements can be at a basic level, whereas the knowledge about biostatistics or data management, etc., should be at a more advanced level. Now, each of these competencies that we talked about can also be interpreted as sub-competencies. What does it mean? It means that you can break these down into, you could say, knowledge and skill, or what we call as, how do you break it down into the ability to ask questions, ability to actually choose something, ability to justify. So, example, why do you take a particular sample size number for a particular study? So there is a reason why you actually take the alpha, the beta, what should be the minimum clinically important difference, etc. So you can actually say, or you can actually justify, you can sometimes choose the right one, identify, define, etc. So these are called as the sub-competencies that you're trying to observe. So if you put this into, say, for example, each of these different domains, say, for example, the protocol. Somebody who is at a basic level of understanding of the domain of protocol will be able to recognize what is the need and rationale for why you're doing the study. Similarly, they should be able to explain what is, you could say, the endpoints that are selected in the study, or they should be able to say what is the or justify why do you need certain endpoints in a study or certain assessments in the study. Similarly, if you go to maybe a different domain of competency, where we look at understanding of adverse events, serious adverse events, etc. So the person should be able to recognize what are the different types of adverse, or what is the difference between a SUSAR, SUSAR, and a serious adverse event. They should be also be able to say that when an SAE happens, what all should I do, including reporting to the regulatory agency, etc. So these are the different ways in which the knowledge and skills of a professional can be assessed in these different competencies. So there are different guidelines and documents that are used, the Indian GCP guidelines, the ICH, the NDCT rules, and ICMR guidelines, etc. So these will enable a person in clinical research to actually prepare themselves for the minimum standards of competence. So thank you so much for your patient listening, and happy to take any questions.
Many thanks, Dr. Sanish, for this crisp, sneak peek into the minimum standard of competence, which we lovingly call it as MSc. Now it is open for all question answers. If you have any questions related to MSc, I'll request Dr. Sanish to reply. And if you have any questions related to certifications as PRCBs or training institutions, I will request Professor Debjani to reply. You can put your questions in the chat box, where I will visit the YouTube, because it's a YouTube live session, and I will pick up those questions from the YouTube live to see whether I can address those questions from the YouTubers. I do not see any questions in the chat box. My interest is to just see chat box, and if you don't have question, it is good idea. That means you have understood, and we are very happy about it. So many people had a question, which Dr. Sonia, my colleague, was mentioning, is that they were interested to know that how will they study to ensure that they pass GCPPCS. So as Dr. Sanish mentioned, and this recording is available, you can see that this all content will come from the standard guidelines. So one is the GCP of CDSCO 2001, another is the ICH GCP, the National Ethical Guidelines 2017 by ICMR. So these are the content from where it will come. And it will come out of your pure experience in the working areas. The questions will be all MCQs. They will be mostly case study based, and it is being totally monitored by a third-party organization or a different certification body. We call it PRCB, personal certification. I'm not able to see any questions either in the chat box here or as well as in the YouTube live. Shall I consider that all the questions are done? If that is the case, then we are well ahead of time. Are ahead, I think then it becomes a very crisp sessions, and we can do more sessions in days to come. If that is the case, I will request and invite Professor Debjani to Joriji to please kindly give the vote of thanks and concluding remarks.
I do not know if Mr. Jory is around. I did see him, but maybe he's got
I
a
also
meeting
saw
from
him.
2
Yeah.
o'clock. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got a meeting.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a wonderful session that we all get together, listen every time, and every time we become more and more knowledgeable, even to listen to the whole gamut of things. For me, I came into this field and I also am learning each day. So that is what it is. And we are very thankful to Dr. Dinda, who took out his valuable time and was here and gave a very lovely introduction to the whole GCP PCS, and also gave all the events that happened and how GCP PCS came about and the number of webinars that we have been having. And we have got a very good response all along. So I'm really thankful to him. And of course, we also welcome Dr. Dinda and his team. I think they're also immensely interested in becoming a part of this entire process. And definitely, like Dr. Sarish, although he's been a part and parcel of this entire story, and he has been developing, and every time he makes us aware of what the MSc is meant to be and how it is to be utilized in the system. And definitely Dr. Sucheta, none other than Dr. Sucheta could have taken this lead and brought it this far. There has been a lot of hiccups during the process. Every journey has its ups and downs, but it is the goal and the vision that matters. And would like to thank Dr. Sucheta and the team and and the entire support that has been received from the organization itself, because it is the organization who comes up and picks up the leaders. And as a result, we are this far. And definitely Dr. Sonia, who's been very, very active. Today we miss her, and we would like to bless her newborn child just a day ago. She's been blessed with a baby boy. She's been sending us mails, giving us the links, and everybody and the entire team. So and the participants, without the participants, nothing happens. And they are our main support structure. So I once again would like to thank each and everyone to have spent such a lot of time. And we would love to see you all more often and be in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Dibjani. Thank you, all of you. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to write to us at gcppcs.cdsa@thsti.res.in. Thank you, Namaskar, and Jai Hind from all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Amit. Sapna, you can close it. Close the live streaming also. Thank you. Thank you, Sapna, so much. And thank you, Jitendra.
Thank you. Thank you all.